Outdoors Queensland respectfully acknowledges the traditional owners of the lands where we gather across the state, and we pay respect to elders past, present and emerging, and acknowledge the important roles that Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples play on the land, sky and waterways used for outdoor activities. I'm in Brisbane, or Meanjin, on Yuggera country, which is a place of the Jagera and the Turrbals peoples. And if you'd like to, you can pop in the chat the place and the country that you're joining from today. Thanks for joining us, Dave. I just saw you put a comment there, you can't stay for long, but welcome, mate. Anyway, stay for as long as you can. We also acknowledge the funding provided by the Queensland Government to support outdoor activities right across Queensland, and appreciate that, acknowledging the work that so many government departments and ministers do in relation to outdoor activities, including Sport and Rec, who are within the Department of Tourism, Innovation and Sport at the moment. So welcome to another session of Coffee and Conversation. My name's Don Courtney, Executive Officer of Outdoors Queensland. Our Operations Manager, Mark Squires, is my regular co-host and is here again for today's session. I'd like to welcome all members of Outdoors Queensland, plus others who are joining us. Just as I said, the recordings of these sessions will be publicly available on the website and on YouTube. I'm not sure what our hit rate is on those, but I'm sure it's probably, challenging. I don't know, some of these other organisations to, like Australia, it's Joe Rogan's probably quivering in his boots every time he hears we've posted another one on YouTube. I'm hoping ours maybe has some more, I'm not going to go there. Anyway, this is the 4th scheduled episode of Coffee and Conversation for 2022. I'm actually coming to you not from the forest behind me, but from my home office. Due to localised flooding in the area, the Outdoors Queensland office at Milton has had no power. Well, actually no electricity. So Outdoors Queensland always has power, which comes from all of you. It comes from our members and from the fact that our mission is about ensuring all people have opportunities to connect with Queensland's outdoors. But our office building's temporarily closed because of no electricity. So I'm joining you from home. I'm hoping the internet signal will hold up. If not, Mark will just take over and you guys, you'll have a wonderful experience with Mark. So I'm not threatening him, I'm just warning him. So yeah, hopefully it'll be right. If it's getting a bit dodgy, I might even just turn my video off and you'll just get a, my melodious voice for a little while without my lovely head. Anyway, we'll see what happens. The world's an interesting place. It's been a ridiculous fortnight since our last session. So we're Outdoors Queensland, we're not Outdoors Southeast Queensland, but we recognise that this severe weather event hasn't affected all of the state, but it's affecting so many Queenslanders right now, including outdoor operators. So we want to dedicate a good section of today's session to the extreme weather event that's just, it's ongoing. So I also want to acknowledge the personal and financial effects of that disaster, and we want to support you as much as we can, whether that's your organisation or you personally. So please let us know as we go along. Yeah, it's going to be challenging times for so many. I saw Tanya just put a comment in there about the access road washed out for buses. So, those sort of impacts are going to be, hopefully they're not long lasting, but they're going to be dramatic. And this is the sort of thing that we need to get on top of, and I'm sure there's going to be so much that comes out of this. But there's also some opportunities I want to highlight quickly, and of course some COVID matters. So, and I haven't even mentioned what's going on in Ukraine at the moment, so we'll leave that one because it's not as relevant to the outdoors. I just saw guys comment Emu Canyon. I hope you're not renaming it, mate. I'd prefer Gully, I think, at the minute. I just wanted to flag, and I flagged this in our last session, the Outdoors Queensland Annual General Meeting, our AGM, is the 16th of March. So it's going to be online via Zoom from 6 o'clock in the evening. So it's an opportunity for members to reflect on the year that was 2021 and have your say about 2022 and beyond. It's also open for non-members to attend, but obviously if you're not a financial member of the organisation or a representative financial member, you won't be able to vote. So really encourage you to come along. and have your say. We've sent out bulletins with the details, including reminders. Mark's done that this week. There's links to all the notices and the forms and the details in there. It is important to RSVP, but also there's a particular form, the notification and covenant form is the name of it. So that does need to be completed by every member every year. So, and as we've said, if you can't attend, you can appoint a proxy to vote on your behalf. So I just want to flag that, and I'll probably remind you of that later on in the meeting. Well, I will actually. Some really good news this week. So in December 2020, Outdoors Queensland registered with Reconciliation Australia to develop our Reconciliation Action Plan, our first RAP. So we formed a RAP working group and developed a Reflect RAP during 2021. And on Monday this week, our Reflect Reconciliation Action Plan was approved by Reconciliation Australia. So I just wanted to mention that we're developing the Reconciliation Action Plan as a way to build stronger and more respectful relationships with Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples, while also showing leadership to the membership and other operators in the outdoor sectors across Queensland. And that's about broadening understanding, respect and value of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander cultures, histories and identities within our organisation and in the wider community. So the board and staff will be working on the actions identified in the plan right throughout this year, and really excited to get into that. I think it's a good step forward for our organisation, and I just want to flag that here as we've got an opportunity. Mark's just shared a link to that in the chat. It's on our website already in the About Us section. A couple of development opportunities that I've flagged previously. The Savannah Guides, who are an Outdoors Queensland member, they've got a couple of really good opportunities coming up. So the Core Cultural Learning course with AIATSIS is an online course, which is about strengthening cultural capability of organisations and workers. Some of our staff have done the course and it was really valuable. So, and we've got some staff doing it again this time, but it's open to anyone. You don't have to be a Savannah Guides member or Outdoors Queensland member to do the course. So you just contact them for information about that. The other one is their field school from 16th to 20th March on Uamian country, which is in the Gulf Savannah in North Queensland. So I think that'd be an amazing experience if you're lucky enough to be able to attend. So I'm sure it'd be a wonderful experience. So I just want to flag that as well. It's only a couple of weeks away. Couple of consultation opportunities, and they're both ones we've mentioned previously. So the Currumbin Eco Parkland, that's still open for community feedback. So if you get a chance, it's well, the website says it'll create one of the largest parks in Australia, 148 hectare site. So certainly worth a look, particularly for anyone down at the Gold Coast who has local knowledge of that. I think it's worth having your say about what you'd like to see on that parkland. It's obviously a significant one for the region as well. And the other one is the cultural heritage laws. That's feedback closes the end of March. So just wanted to flag that as well. That's an opportunity for anyone from the community to complete a survey or lodge a submission. A couple of funding opportunities. The Gambling Community Benefit Fund, the super round of up to $100,000 it's actually open now. You should check the website for details around availability. You do need to register your organisation just to access the application form. So if you're even considering it, don't leave it to the last minute would be my advice. We're happy to provide letters of support for financial members. It's one of those benefits of membership. If the organisation wants a letter of support, please get in early and provide us with the description and details of your project so that we can provide that letter of support. But yeah, please get in early on that. The other one there, the Sport and Rec Disaster Recovery Program, I mentioned this 2 weeks ago in relation to some local government areas across Queensland that were already in that program, which was about its funding to re-establish facilities and activities after extreme natural events. It's been expanded dramatically, obviously, in the last week. And so there's a lot of details on the website. Level 1 funding is up to $5,000 to assist in immediate cleanup efforts. So you should check the guidelines, but it's certainly worth looking at that one right now. And the other one is the Fair Play vouchers that Sport and Rec have a round open right now as well, which closes in a couple of weeks. So that one's about vouchers for eligible Queensland children and youth who can least afford to join a Sport and Rec club. It's a voucher up to $150 that can be used towards cost of membership, participation, or registration fees with registered physical activity providers. So that closes 23rd of March, as it says on the screen. So worth a look there as well. Yeah, so I just wanted to flag those. I'm ripping through these fairly quickly because they are things we've discussed previously. I did want to say too, if you're aware of any community consultation processes that are going on that you think we should be aware of and we can promote, please let us know. Like we are always happy to promote things like that or other funding opportunities too. So yeah, just happy if you can send us through an email or give us a call. I'm more than happy to promote these sort of things and so more people know about them. If there's any questions you go along, feel free to pop your hand up or just unmute and let me know. Good old COVID. So I think I'll probably go relatively quick through some of these slides. There's a bit in here that we've covered off in the past. So the roadmap for the COVID safe future, it hasn't been updated since early January, but I think it's going to be updated later today due to the changes to mask requirements. So you can see that section in the red box there, which talks about when masks are required. So we've been told by the government that that's going to change from today. So expect this will be updated very soon. So yeah, that'll be coming. But the new normal along the bottom of the roadmap, expect that to stay there. So all of those points that we've talked about so many times and how it works particularly for outdoor operators and outdoor people, they are just as relevant now as they have been. So just wanted to flag those as well. A quick slide there, that's the one about the upcoming easing of restrictions from 6 o'clock today. So masks no longer required indoors, except in those areas mentioned there: healthcare settings, residential aged care, disability accommodation, prisons, public transport, airports, and on planes. Importantly, not required in schools, including for staff, students, and visitors, but recommended whenever you can't social distance. So I'm not going to read it all out to you, but there's some good things there, and the venues and events no longer having density limits. So I think there's some real positives there, and some changes to check-in requirements as well, and that's already come through. So I guess the big message there is it's about easing of restrictions is the wording that the government's been using. So just wanted to flag that as well. So back to school plan. I've just sort of changed this slide a little bit from last fortnight and just put, guess what, the 4th of March is today. So the back to school plan, which I'm sure you're all aware, was released by the Queensland Government for Education Queensland on the 30th of January. It actually expires today. So just this morning, I was advised by an officer within the Department of Education that the government websites will be updated later today, and possibly around 6 o'clock when those easing of restrictions come into effect. And so the advice is that the Queensland Health document that we discussed in detail in previous sessions of Coffee and Conversation, that one that's dated 3rd of February, that'll actually be removed from the government websites. And the message is it's back to normal from 6 o'clock today, and school camps can operate as you normally would with the normal other COVID safe measures in place. So that was what we've been told by the Department of Education, and really wanted to just pass that message on in relation to it. I do really want to acknowledge the work of the staff at Education Queensland. They've done so much work with us to deal with the impacts of the back to school plan. They've listened to us. They've been open and shared as much information as they could, including in our sessions here, but also in other meetings and phone calls, etc. And it was a time, where we desperately needed to understand how it might all play out. So we do need to thank them. Also want to thank Rod from Australian Campus Association and Graham from Christian Venues Association for their work. The impacts of the temporary suspension of school camps have been significant and are ongoing, but it is terrific to know that school camps can resume after today. So just wanted to put that out there. However, the impacts of the back to school, there's still work to be done about financial support for affected operators. This is actually, it was brought to my attention, it was raised in Parliament this week, in Queensland Parliament, by an opposition MP, and it's been placed on the record as a request to the government in relation to support for operators. Letters have been written to the government regarding financial support. It's not something that we're just going to give up on. I think, it'd be really helpful if you can provide some detailed data to us, which can be anonymised, so we can prevent a full picture of the financial impact of the suspension of camps for these several weeks. And also, I put there stories of personal impact. I don't want to overstate it, but we do need to understand that the government understands what's happened and they can react appropriately and I think provide support. So, of course, a lot of people in Queensland right now are focused on the impacts of the severe weather event, including the media and politicians in southeast Queensland. So I guess my thinking about this is maybe it's a really good time for operators outside the areas who've been impacted by the natural disaster to actually speak to your local MPs, ensure they understand this issue and its impacts. It might actually be a really good opportunity for those outside of southeast Queensland to maybe just take a lead on this while other operators are dealing with the recovery process. I'm happy to discuss further, sorry. But yeah, really just wanted to put that out there if anyone's able to do that. Does anyone want to comment on that one? Nope.
I think it would be remiss to not comment that the response that local member got in Parliament last week was not particularly encouraging. If anyone wants to know what was actually said, they can email me.
Thanks, Andrew. Yeah, Andrew sent me the Hansard transcript and a link to the recording. I couldn't access the recording, but yeah, I think there's certainly more work to be done on this. And as I said, it's not something that we can just drop, but it's something that we need more work on, and we need to be able to really show what the real picture is in relation to this impact of what is a education department government policy and what it's done to the industry. So yeah, it's certainly something that we need to keep working on.
Can I make a comment, Dom, if I may?
Yes, Pete, absolutely, mate.
Just one thing, I think it might be harder data to gather, but I think the impact of actual freelance instructors of the suspension of camps in Queensland, I think would be very interesting to get information on. And I encourage organisations not to just provide organisational data, but actual information on employees and the impact to them, because it's been quite great from my understanding.
Completely agree, Pete. Yeah, I've tried to, I guess when I said operators there, I definitely didn't mean just organisations. I meant, outdoor people, I suppose. And that's why I've deliberately put in there about impact from workers and clients. I think that's a really important point, and it is it's more than the financial impact of all of this. The financial impact's huge, but also the personal impact of what it's done and how it's affected so many people. So that's the sort of stories that we need to make clear. As I said, I don't want to overstate it. I know a lot of people are terribly affected by the flood disaster as well, but we need to get the story across. So we need as much information as you can provide. I saw Brendan's joined. I've also suggested contacting peak bodies, and I'm sure LEAQ would be more than happy to gather some of those stories as well. So and same with us and Christian Venues Association and Australian Camps Association. Sorry to throw acronyms at you, but I didn't want to bomb the slide there. Does anyone else want to speak on that one? I've sort of ripped through a lot of this stuff pretty quickly. And David's just made a point about ensuring we don't fall between the cracks. And Tanya's made a comment there about feeling unsupported. And yeah, I understand that, Tanya, and thank you for sharing that. So Tanya, send us an email. It's probably the easiest. You can send it to myself or Mark, and we've got a bit of a spreadsheet going. But we won't be sharing direct information to the government or anything. But we're trying to gather what that information is. Some people have already shared some information to us about what it looked like. I guess the key things as far as what data. It's what data you're able to share as well. And as Pete just flagged, some of this is going to be not easy to get, but, as far as number of workers affected is, the sort of figures that I think we need to have out there, the number of workers affected, the bookings, but importantly, bookings lost that are unlikely or are not going to rebook, because that's a key thing. So those sort of things, there was that is actually important to this process, because it shows real loss. It's not just a matter of as we've discussed in the past, and it was acknowledged last session, that if a school couldn't come in week 1, that's all right, they'll just rebook in week 5. It's that's just not the way the world works in our space, unfortunately. So those sort of stories about bookings, putting a money figure on it, because that actually tells a story for some people. But also, I think an important part is the number of students, particularly children, who are affected by these cancellations, which can put it in real terms for politicians particularly. So that sort of figure, as much as you're able to give us and you feel comfortable giving us, we can work with putting some figures together. So that's probably the sort of stuff as far as what sort of numbers you can give us. Some people are impressed by statistics. Some people need the personal stories, and I would be happy to give them both, because we know that there is both out there, but it's just a matter of painting a real picture without, like I say, without trying to overstate it. All right. Has anyone else got any questions, comments? Mark's just shared the email address there for himself and me in the chat. Unfortunately, my email address is shorter, so you'll probably all use that, but that's all right. You can send it to either. Brad, I just kept on going earlier. I noticed you flagged, you put in the chat some information about the Rites of Passage camp coming up in April. So did you want to speak about that at all, Brad?
Yeah, I suppose at the moment we're a little bit undecided if it's going to happen, brother, because of the rain. But historically, a group of us men up in the Fraser Coast and Bundy area have had concerns for our Aboriginal youth over the last 6 years, and I suppose formed that partnership with Anna Rubenstein from the Rites of Passage. And yeah, so the last since basically 2018, we've been facilitating these Rites of Passage camps for youth and non-Indigenous youth too. So it's just a great opportunity for father and sons, or whoever they can bring with them to come along.
Excellent. Thanks, Brad. And it's really good to hear those sort of activities going ahead. Hopefully it will go ahead and you're, up and operating and not affected by, the devastation that so many organisations have had. So, yeah, thank you for sharing that, mate. Really appreciate it. If you'd like us to, we'd be happy to put it up on our website as well if you want us to promote it as well.
That's right, brother. No worries.
Thanks, Brad. All right. Moving right along, just to complicate things a little bit more, the severe weather event this week. And as I said earlier, we're not outdoors SEQ, and this event's affected more than just southeast Queensland too. It's obviously affecting New South Wales at the moment, but also other areas of Queensland. But it's affected so many Queenslanders, including outdoor operators. So I do want to dedicate a good chunk of time to this today. So a huge thanks to Charlie, our marketing communications manager, who's developed resources for social media channels this week, and some of these are going to be basically the next few slides. We put out on Tuesday a statement which unfortunately proved to be so true, that the flood event was still going. It wasn't over. It was, the severe storm cells that have come across southeast Queensland yesterday particularly, and we were just putting that warning there to stay alert and check your forecasts and local conditions. It's something outdoor operators are good at in general, but it's just that reminder that it's there. That if it's flooded, forget it. You can't say that too often, I think. So we just wanted to put that messaging out as well. So other key messages, we actually put one out which might seem to go against what we're about, where we said adventure can wait. We are saying consider when it might be appropriate to resume outdoor activities and to not enter places and spaces that have been closed. So this is about, for us, taking an approach that outdoor people demonstrate commitment to responsible conduct in our activities, and avoiding suggestions that outdoor activities might have exacerbated any damage associated with the weather event. So, damage to trail networks could be made worse by people riding, walking, running on trails that are actually closed. So, and the third point is we don't want to put emergency services personnel, paid or volunteer, at additional risk during that time. So that's some important messaging. We just wanted to put it out there. It seems to have been received really well. So just wanted to flag that one as well. So the next one was saying, even if places are open, encourage people to think twice before entering if you're unsure. Right now, just yesterday, the QFES, Queensland Fire Emergency Services Commissioner, Greg Leach, urged people who had to go outside to be really aware of your surroundings. He said, if you're out moving around at the moment in these dangerous conditions, not only do you need to look down for floodwaters and flash flooding, you need to look up, because if the ground's so saturated, any wind squalls can bring trees down really easily. And I think that's a message that we need to hear as well. It's quite relevant for outdoor activities. That said, as I said before, outdoor people are pretty good at doing safety and risk assessments. It's a normal part of practice. But after this sort of event that we've had across so much, of southern Queensland particularly, you just need to consider some different risks, like water quality issues in the waterways, a range of nastiness in the sludge after the floodwaters recede, possible encounters with displaced animals. I think there's a few snakes on the move, particularly at the moment, and they may not be all that happy having lost their homes. Maybe that's just my fear showing itself, but snakes is one of those for me. But also the other one that's a really important one to consider right now is risks of mosquito-borne disease in the coming time. So Queensland Health has actually warned that they've identified Japanese encephalitis in Queensland in the last week or so, which is just another thing to add to the mix. So I guess there's just extra things to think about at the minute. So I wanted to just flag those as well. We've also repeated that messaging so many times this week about considering cancelling any unnecessary travel during this event and in the aftermath of it. So next one here is about a little quick dot point summary of what recovery post flood. I just saw David's comment about biblical flood, fire, plague. Yeah, I've just about had enough of 22 already, to be honest, Dave. So, and just saw your comment about cancelling on Tuesday. Yeah. I can wait for the boils and frogs. Yep. So we put out a bulletin this week, an e-bulletin. Hopefully you've all received it. And I'd had messaging from Sport and Rec regarding recovery after the flooding. And really, thank you to Sport and Rec. They actually organised a meeting on Monday afternoon with the Minister to talk about this event and the recovery after it. Sport and Rec have actually... the document they put out, which we republished, and Mark did that really quickly for us as well. I do have to thank Mark for his efforts this week as well, while also putting out our normal monthly bulletin and all the other work that he does. But yeah, I do have to thank Mark for that. But have a look at that Sport and Rec bulletin, please. It's got some really good stuff in there about, even electrical supply, making sure supply can be safely reconnected, checking insurance, contacting insurers, getting images of tide marks and water heights in and around building and equipment, taking videos, stuff like that. Not entering if it's not safe, personal protective equipment, even just clearing off stormwater drains if it's safe to do so, just in case of the follow-up rain, and documenting damage. So, the concern that Sport and Rec have shown for the whole active industry is actually really, it's wonderful to see, and it's great that help that they're giving there. So I do want to acknowledge that. Yeah. So does anyone have any questions about that? I mean, I've ripped through those points pretty quickly, but it's on that bulletin that we've sent out as well. So there's some resources available right now. The disaster assistance funding, all levels of government are making disaster assistance funding available to affected individuals and organisations. I think the advice has been apply as soon as you can if you're affected, if your organisation's affected. And I think you can always update your application at a later date once you have more information. But I think there's going to be so many people affected in that space. And it's certainly, if you are one of those people or your organisation, I think it's definitely worth looking into it right now, if you can. The second one there is the Active Queenslanders Industry Alliance next Tuesday evening. It's a free webinar on flood recovery. So that's aimed at clubs, particularly who are affected by the flood crisis. And there's a range of different topics in there about, including, so that it includes sports. So it's about things like how do you ensure playing fields are playable and healthy to use. There's information about state government funding, revenue raising in a crisis. There's a topic on that. Local government support. The Brisbane City Council's announced some funding that they're making available, and I'm sure other councils are too. And they're looking at other grants available. So you do need to register to attend that, but I'd really strongly encourage as many people as possible to do so. I think it's a valuable thing that AQIA is doing. I'm on the board of AQIA. Probably some conflict of interest but we regularly promote the work that they do. And this is just another example of the work that AQIA is doing for the active industry across Queensland. So, yeah, just wanted to let you know about that one. I've also flagged the Outdoor Council of Australia guidance note. That's about planning for activities and development of activity management plans. It's not a response resource, but I just wanted to flag it and suggest it might be worth revisiting that guidance note in light of this extreme weather event, and whether it's a time to make any changes to your systems, as you know, while it's fresh in your mind. So I think it's something to discuss there. Certainly, there's a bit of work going on, or has been some work. Outdoors New South Wales actually updated that guidance note last year, and we I think it was. Well, it's on the screen there, May last year. So it's certainly worth another look at that document if you haven't looked at it recently. Dave, should the OCA set up a working group? Do you want to discuss that, Dave, or is it just a question to the group?
Well, yeah, look, I mean, over the last 2 decades down in Victoria, where I operate in the Alps, I figure we've lost about 30 days, of that we would have operated in normally, because the weather wouldn't have been as bad as it's been over the last bit. But it's across the whole of Australia. And I mean, strategically, we've got to look at things like how do we ensure against it, what government support can we look to trying to get in the future, And then there's that how do we assist people operationally to plan and stuff like that. I mean, I'm not suggesting a huge thing like the other working groups, but it might be worthwhile getting just a group of people from across Australia together, have a bit of a couple of seminars and see if we can come up with a bit of direction.
Yeah, I think it's a good idea too, Dave, and it's certainly, I'll put it to the OCA board. At the moment, you know, there's so much going on, but I think you make a really good point about, you know, I like the fact that you said in your note there strategically as well as operationally. So I might take that one on as a task. Thanks for handing me another thing to do, Dave. I need that right now. I haven't been very busy lately, so I'll get onto the OCA board, and as a good president does, I'll see if I can't delegate that, or be involved myself. But yeah, thank you, mate. I do appreciate that. So.
And I'm happy to be involved. Chuck my hand in if and I think the new CEO of the OEG is looking very participative. So I reckon he'd be the sort of person that'd get involved.
I can't believe you're just nominating people left and right, mate. But don't worry, you were going to be involved. You started it, so yeah, I'll let you know on that one, on where we get to. The other one I just had at the bottom there, the dot point there, volunteer opportunities. Oh, can't even say the word. So there's going to be plenty of opportunities to volunteer to assist in this recovery. The famous Brisbane Mud Army has been called up again for action. So there's Volunteering Australia, Volunteering Queensland are helping with that with the government. But it's also a time to support your local community group or your neighbours in whatever way you can, if you can. And some of you might be one of those people who needs a hand. Your group might need a hand. So I think it's also about using our networks. And, you know, if we can help with that, let us know. There's going to be trail care groups that will be reinstating work that they've probably only recently finished, or you know, there's going to be a whole lot of things that need doing over the next little while, just as a result of this this issue. So, and I just saw Brad from Wild Projects said, if anyone knows primary producers in Wide Bay burnout region require assistance, you have a team available to assist in general land management. Wow, mate, that's really generous of you. Thanks, mate. Yeah, so thanks very much for flagging that, mate. I reckon there'll be a little bit of demand for someone to repair or clean fences at the minute, unfortunately, right across so much of southern Queensland.
Yeah, you don't mind if I speak into that a little bit?
Oh, mate, love you too. Yeah, go for it.
I suppose back in the 2010, 11 and 13 floods, that's where we first kicked off, taking young Aboriginal youth out to rural remote properties, just getting young fellas to lend a hand, and I suppose at the same time giving them some skills and opportunities just to give back to community. So that Better to Give program that we kicked off back in the day, we still do now. We sow back in the community wherever we can, and that's part of our core business with our Cert 3 trainees that we've got working with us now.
Wow, that's excellent, mate. Thank you for letting us know about that. It's those sort of things. It's great to see that, you know, organisations, stepping up to those sort of initiatives. So yeah, thank you for sharing that, mate. And if anyone does know of any primary producers, as Brad said, yeah, I'm sure maybe directly to you, mate, or how do you want to contact you? Yep, through your website.
Yeah, brother. Yeah.
Yep. Excellent. Thanks, mate. All right. This one's it's a coincidence, but it's probably timely as well. The Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change released its 22 assessment report this week, which, among other things, warns of impacts from extreme events such as floods. So on the screen there is a shot from the fact sheet for Australasia. Sorry. I think in the past people have suggested it's not appropriate to talk about climate action while people are suffering from a disaster. But personally, I think there's probably no better time to talk about it and to seek to obtain real action and commitment to ongoing climate action and truly address climate change. So I felt I'd be remiss to not include this as a topic. We acknowledge climate change in our strategic plan for Outdoors Queensland, and obviously, we know that outdoor operators are already concerned about this, particularly in relation to the increased severity of extreme events, which Dave mentioned earlier. It's visible. It's changing our lifetime, I guess, and the question is what's going to be in the future. So I know this can get political, and I just wanted to put it out there and see if anyone wanted to comment on, I haven't read the whole report. I've just pulled off a little bit from the summary there, but if anyone wants to comment on it, more than happy to have a quick discussion there as well.
I might just speak on that, if that's right, brother.
Yes, mate. Yep.
Like talking about those ecosystems, like we do a lot of work with our endangered species, mainly in those riparian areas. Like there's a big lot of work that needs to happen from communities to care for our communities along those riparian systems. And I suppose if everybody knows, that terminology, ecosystems, it's just everything's connected. And when we start damaging, especially our riparian areas, it's a big problem. We work with a critically endangered species up this way, the white-throated snapping turtle, and it's got a federal recovery plan in place, but no funding attached to it. So we get a lot of our native species that are just about going off the face of the earth, and nobody's doing much about it. So it's a big thing, climate action.
Yep. And I think part of that too, mate, is it's, as you say, it's all connected. And part of this also is if the country's unwell, people are going to be unwell. So there's that aspect of this as well. And we know we're talking about these changes and the interconnection of it all. Yeah, it's pretty, it's a big issue. And I think we, as I say, I felt we would have been remiss to not bring it up after what we've just seen in the last week. So I just wanted to flag it. There's only so much that each of us can do, but I think collectively we can do a lot. And I think we need to take that sort of approach. Not trying to, I guess I am trying to tell people what to do. Not, it is up to everyone to, I guess, to make a decision on what this means for you individually and for your organisations. But yeah, I just wanted to have it in there.
I think you're doing the right thing, Dom. It would be remiss of us not to. And, we're going to be heavily impacted over this in our lives, but also the future educators and outdoor leaders and those sort of things. They're going to be confronting our choices that we make now. So
thanks, Mike. Yeah, I mean, to be honest, I've seen in a government report a few years ago, it was on adaptation to climate change, and one of the possible adaptations that was suggested was more indoor venues for people to do physical activity, because outdoor spaces may become unaccessible more and more often, and that scared me. That's a that's a document that was produced by the Queensland government, and you're like, holy mackerel! If that's genuinely an approach, that's a pretty big worry for me personally, but for our whole sector. If that's considered a genuine, reaction to what this stuff's going to look like in the future. So, and it's all of those kids, and it's so much.
I think, yeah, like that's the reality of it, and we're going to be moved that way by the insurance and by government agencies and those people that will be looking at the actions and activities that we do. So we need to be prepared for that, just like, in preparation for COVID and those sort of things. We were prepared for this next round, but the government took many things out of our hands in our decision making. So we need to be on the front foot on this sort of stuff as much as we can be.
Yep. Thanks, mate.
Hi, Dom. It's Robin here. Sorry, I don't have my camera on. But
that's all right, Robin.
Look, I work with Brendan at the university, but I'm actually just writing up a proposal as we speak to put in for a PhD looking at the changing climate of outdoor environmental education in Australia, and doing a comparative case study between Queensland and Victoria, because obviously Victoria was a place where outdoor ed is quite embedded, and Queensland is an area which has sort of gained notoriety of late, but hasn't got a BC outdoor education. So I'm just writing that up, but I think what people should do is just take detailed notes of what has impacted them in terms of COVID, and then just climate change. Just keep a diary, so we've got anecdotal data that we can draw upon and use, because we really need to, as Brendan said, and you said, we don't want to end up with outdoor education being indoor education.
No, there's enough indoor education already, Robin, I reckon. But yeah, thank you very much. If you want to get information out about, assuming that PhD program goes ahead on that one, if you do want to, please let us know if we can assist in that one. I'll be more than happy to, if you want to, even if it's surveys, those sort of things, interviews that you want to make known, please let us know if we can help on that, because I think those are exactly the sort of things we need more of.
Excellent. Thank you.
Thanks, Robin.
Just as a comment, New South Wales has got a group looking at climate change and its effect on the outdoor industry, the environment, land management, animals and etc. So yeah. They
had a group set up that was just having discussions on that one, and there's certainly there's more work to be done on that. I've spoken to Laurie about that too, and it's like you say, it's not just a Queensland thing, it's a worldwide thing, but we need to do what we can in our patch, I suppose, is probably and that applies to everyone, every organisation, in my opinion. So did someone else started to speak? Sorry.
Yeah, Dom, if it was okay, just in regards to Robin there, like I'd be interested to connect with people, especially again with our riparian systems, like in the floods with all the pontoons that get washed out. And it was the same back in 2013. Our pontoons are all made out of styrofoam, and what happens when all those pontoons flow out into the ocean, like all that styrofoam's going out, and Maritime Safety Queensland still have done nothing to legislate, the construction of pontoons, and having a bit of accountability to those people that own those pontoons.
Yep. Yeah, and it's there's all sorts of different issues in relation to construction materials and those sort of things as far as the environmental impact in the manufacturing, but also in the long term. But it's another good point, and thanks, mate. I think there's so many different layers of this topic. Obviously, it's probably a topic of its own for another day, but I just wanted to flag it today as a discussion point and bring it up in this one. But I think it's interesting to hear what is happening, but we all know there's so much more needs to be done in this space. Mark shared a link to the Australasia fact sheet. Thanks for doing that, Mark, just in the chat. Sorry, I haven't really been keeping much of an eye on the chat, but a few reminders. Pete or Dave, I've just got inside the outhouse there. the Outhouse has returned in 2022 with a couple of episodes already. But Pete, did you want to speak to what's coming up?
Yeah, I've got a bit of an announcement about what we're doing next Monday the 7th. We're moving, I guess, and discussing the Duke of Edinburgh award scheme, which is an international award scheme, which is run by a range of schools and other providers throughout Queensland and throughout all states in Australia and throughout the world. And we're hopefully going to get guest speakers who are international to come in and put their 2 cents worth on how D&E is happening in their life. So we hope we can join you if you're interested in Duke of Edinburgh and the award scheme there and unpacking that as a topic. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you, Pete. So I'll be calling you the Duke for that session, will I?
The Duke has already been nominated. I think his name is Charles last time I checked. But anyway, yeah, you can call me the Duke.
Is Prince Charles now the Duke of Edinburgh as well, adding that to his titles, is he? I didn't realise that. And maybe I'm not following activities so far away closely enough.
I actually heard from the back room in my place here that it's actually Edward, I think, is the Duke of Edinburgh. But I'll have to fact check it and get back to you.
So that's why it's called Duke of Ed. Got it. Thanks, Pete. I think that'll do. We'll just assume it's him, mate. It's got to be someone in their family. The other resources there I've just mentioned, our websites, our e-bulletins, and our social media. Feel free to share any of those posts that we've put up about the flood recovery too. If you'd like to, you're more than welcome to share those posts to your networks. We really want to get that information out. I think, again, I said earlier, Charlie did a terrific job putting those together for us, and more than happy for you to share those to your networks as well. And the e-bulletin's the same. If there's information in there, if you want to forward that to someone who doesn't subscribe to it, please do. We're trying to get as much information as we can out, and we'll keep doing that as we get more info. And the last point there is the Outdoors Queensland AGM. So we actually need you to attend so that there's an AGM. If you're a member of Outdoors Queensland or a rep of a member organisation, please check out the Mark sent out plenty of bulletins to remind you, but there's the forms are on there, online forms, and it's an online, everyone loves online meetings. So yeah, that's just my last reminder there, other than, which isn't on the screen, that AQIA webinar next Tuesday, 6:30 p.m. Queensland time. So yeah, Mark's just decided that he's put a thing to tell Pete the Duke of Edinburgh is Charles, Prince of Wales. I think it should be Prince Edward. So I'll let the Queen know if she doesn't mind changing that one. So, and Mark's just shared another link to the AGM there. So thanks, mate. He can do many things, Mr. Squires. He's pretty good. That pretty much brings us to the end. So unless anyone has any other hot topics you'd like to discuss, we've got a couple of minutes. Otherwise, I'll let you all disappear early. You can have an early lunch break. But I do want to say thanks to Mark for co-hosting today, and for all the work he does. Charlie also joined just in case I dropped out to assist Mark. So thanks, Charlie. You were on the reserve bench for us, but yeah, thank you for joining just in case. Does anyone else have any topics? Dave, yeah.
I was just going to ask, it's something that's come across my desk recently, whether or not outdoor providers and centres in the commercial sector, I guess, if they're struggling with just the general aspect of COVID and how students are now dropping out of camps at the last possible moment, and possibly staff, as in teachers, and what the impact that does towards their invoicing of the school or the client. So I've had an inquiry from a site that we're going to shortly, where they want payment up front before we depart, but I won't know who will turn up until Monday at 6 a.m. mostly around COVID, and it's a bigger effect now than it has been pre-pandemic, because obviously we'd always get students who would pull out the last minute or would be sick. But now with COVID, they're maybe not super symptomatic, but if they get a RATS test, they can't come if it's positive, so they drop out. And I'm just wondering, is the industry adapting to that here in Queensland, or is it something we're setting minimum policies for bookings, or what the general vibe is, or if it's a big problem that actually needs to be addressed?
We haven't had camps to know.
Well, that was the thing that I'm thinking, that there's probably not a lot of this since the new era of immediate RATS tests, and being able to know that I can't go to school today, therefore I can't go to camp. But I don't know that the industry, at least some of the providers I'm talking with, have actually modified their thinking in regards to it.
I think it's definitely something that needs, close an eye on over the next few weeks. I'm obviously hoping that things pick up quickly, particularly in relation to school camps in the next few weeks. I'm sure there's still going to be, as I said earlier, impacts from the suspension of camps. But it's a good point, Dave. So thanks for making that. And maybe it's something we'll discuss in coming episodes of these sessions, and certainly see what can be done in relation to that. Paying for an entire group up front can be quite onerous, I guess, when you're not really sure how many people are going to turn up. So it's a practical measure that needs to be considered.
Quite a few operators did that before the pandemic, where you'd actually have to confirm numbers 2 weeks beforehand, and that was what you paid on. We don't do it that way, but that's not uncommon in the industry.
Yep. Thanks, mate. All righty. That pretty much brings us to a close. Our next session will be in 2 weeks, Friday the 18th of March. I genuinely hope that people are telling stories of successful camps and also recovery from this flood event, but it may take longer than that, of course. But yeah, hopefully we'll have some positive stories in the next couple of weeks. I think that my regular sign-off message actually has a little bit of extra meaning for this session, which is look after yourself, look after others, and look after the planet. I think I just wanted to put that one out there, and really, look forward to speaking to many of you in a fortnight, but if not before. So thanks again for joining us for today's session.